About India has been reinforced after the budget. Markets have received the budget very well. We've had a big increase in Indian asset valuations, so that's good. I think that it's also fair to say that I think some of this optimism is not just based on prospects for the future, which seem quite bright, but also based on, a number of things that have happened, over the last 2 years. I think the commitment to macro stability has been very sound. And, in addition, in the economic survey, we spell out what the government has done by way of a number of what are seemingly individually incremental reforms, but they add up to something that's collectively quite meaningful. I think, for example, just to highlight, 2, 3, 4 major ones that I think are quite significant. I think the sense that corruption, at least of a certain sort, no longer pervades the Indian economic landscape is a kind of quite a change from the preceding 3 or 4 years. The sense of trust in government and decision making on the economic policy side, especially with relation to auctioning valuable public assets. I think that's been a big change. I think another very, important point to highlight is that, the interesting thing is, in the morning there was all this talk about, there is no, all parties are on the same side on this. But I do think that, and maybe this is bipartisan, but I certainly think in the last 1.5 years, there's been a tremendous opening up to foreign direct investment. I think that's been one of the highlights of many of the things that the government has done. I think that what's happening on what we call the JAM Trinity, Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, Mobile, combining financial inclusion with technology to be able to better deliver a whole range of social and government services. I think that's truly transformational, and that's why I think that the Aadhaar bill is going to be so important and why I'm really very, very excited about. I think that, the economic survey also says, for example, that it's not as if, there have not been, some areas where more things could be done. I think one big one, of course, is the GST. But I'm still quite hopeful that, in the coming months, we can pass something that's going to be as landmark as the Aadhaar bill as well. So if we can put together a package of these reforms, if we can, maintain macroeconomic stability, I think that, the prospects for the Indian economy are very bright. I want to step back and make 2 broad points, and I'll end with that. I think that if you ask me what is, the fundamental promise of India, in a kind of deep sense, I would say 3 things. One, I think if we can continue this process of structural reforms, I think that would contribute a lot to, enhancing the promise of India. That's one. Second, I think that, the dynamic of competitive federalism is I think, a powerful agent for change in India. If one state does well, it acts both as a model and a magnet for other states. And we've seen this logic of competitive federalism having been unleashed in the last 10 years, and that's working as well. So we also have this dynamic force coming from competitive federalism between states. And I think third, and above all, when many people in India long wistfully for, decision-making a la China, where things can get done very quickly. I mean, I'm reminded of, the famous postmodern philosopher Donald Rumsfeld once said that, you go to battle with the army that you have, not you wish to have. Similarly, we confront these challenges with the system we have, not with the system we wish we had. And this is a system of, this raucous, amazing democracy that we have. But what is really heartening is that in the last, I would say, 2 or 3 election cycles, not always, not all the time, but on average and increasingly, good economics tends to be good politics. States and central governments that deliver, either in terms of growth, inflation, social services, they broadly get re-elected. States that don't do well get punished in the polls. So it shows that, democracy can itself throw up, some of the positive forces for change. So accelerated structural reforms from the center, the logic of competition between states and the dynamism that can unleash, combined with the fact that good economics becomes good politics, I think is kind of the package that I think is the real promise of India. Last point. I think that many of our judgments and assessments, of course, get clouded by our expectations, what we think should happen. And I think that one thing we need to keep in mind always is the following, is something that we said in the economic survey last year, that the two stylized facts about post-war reform and growth all around the world is something we have to keep in mind. Two things. I think that major reforms, big bang reforms that everyone cries out for, I think require two preconditions. One, that these things generally tend to happen around or near a crisis, either before or just after a crisis is when. And this is an absolutely systematic pattern. Second, these big bang reforms tend to be easier in more centralized systems. So if you step back and look at India, thankfully, of course, we're not in a crisis.
Incident, a promising young kabaddi player was shot dead on the streets of Rohtak in Haryana. What's truly alarming is that the fatal shooting was caught on camera on Tuesday afternoon. Kabaddi player Sukhwinder Singh
Of living a quiet, happy, boring life, so I decided to get married, and my wife says, welcome to hell, boy. But the episode ain't that bad. It's just about all right, above average.